Welcome to 20,000 Voices, research insights that every marketer needs in 2024. I'm Graham Donald, president of Brainstorm Strategy Group. I'm sorry not to be there in person with you, but very excited to be presenting and sharing with you. And we'll have a live Q&A, as you know, when I wrap this up. There's a QR code there for you to get a copy of my slides after the presentation. We'd like to know who's got the research that we're sharing, so there's a download through that route. And before I do anything else, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, an area that's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that this area is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I think we all have different ways of understanding reconciliation and understanding Canada's colonial past. For me, I'm a big reader, and I've made a deliberate effort over the last few years to read an awful lot of books by Indigenous authors. I just thought I'd share 8 of the best of, in my opinion, out of the ones I've read, in case you're thinking about any of these books. They all relate to Canada and North America, not necessarily all Canadian authors or Canadian Indigenous authors, but like yourselves, who have a passion for student success and have a doorway to help and support those students. So our mission is to deliver insightful research, strategic advice, professional development, and specialized training that empowers both employers and post-secondary education professionals to support student success. So I mentioned employers there. So we do a lot of training with employers, help them figure out how to be more effective at attracting, engaging, and recruiting students into internships, summer co-op, and into full-time careers. Similar work really to what you do when you attract and engage students and try to draw them into your post-secondary institutions. You want them to make the right decision, but you also know they need to understand your institution and its strengths and its different role in the marketplace. So that's who we are. It's something we're very passionate about, and I think some common ground we have with you. You may be familiar with us for the SEM conferences and other programming that we do. We've been doing it for a long time. It's Canada's largest enrollment management conference, but we see it as much more than enrollment management. It's really about bringing everybody who cares about attracting students, engaging them, helping them sure they're successful, and helping them move on out of their post-secondary experience and supporting all that through the success. So there's a couple of programs upcoming that are worth knowing about as a PSE marketer. Strategic Enrollment Marketing for Leaders is a brand new program. A whole bunch of really people presenting that program over a 5-week, I think it's 2 hours a week for 5 weeks. Micro-credential program starts in September. QR code there in case you want to learn more about it.
Hi everyone, if you could just give us a moment, we're trying to troubleshoot the video. We are having some technical difficulties. Give us just a moment to try to figure it out.
Welcome to 20,000 Voices to Grow Enrollment. And we need to find the right students for our school so that they will be successful. We need to provide that success on the way through. These are challenging times in post-secondary. There's no question about it. And that makes them just that much more important a time to be in a learning role. So 20,000 voices, research insights that every marketer needs in 2024. And I've added the year on the end there in 2024 so that PSE Web will say, hey, we need the 2025 version next year and the 2026 version the next year, because every year we are surveying more than 20,000 students for our research. And it covers a lot of ground, but a lot of that is very relevant to you as post-secondary marketers. So I'm taking little snippets here and trying to focus on things that I think be particularly relevant to you as you market and differentiate your programs and try to engage young people and the right young people for your institution and your programs. Pretty much every presentation I've spoken about in the last year or so with our research has had this as a theme, because it's really the theme that I see coming out of the research that's reflecting today's generation of students. A tale of lost connections, money problems, and the pursuit of happiness. And I used the word generation a moment ago. I want to be clear that when I'm not really talking about a full 20-year generation, I'm talking about the students that are in post-secondary right now and those who are just about to come into post-secondary. So we're really talking about the students that you're dealing with. We absolutely include in this data graduate students, mature students, and so on. So it is there's that breadth to it. But our main focus is on those students that are in post-secondary as undergrads and understanding what drives their decisions. Lost connections is probably something you can relate to yourselves. People are less connected in our society, and social media has made it only that much tougher, especially for younger people who don't know a world pre-social media. And some of you may be in that category. Money problems, no surprise, right? Housing costs, inflation, and so on. That's going to be a theme. And then finally, the pursuit of happiness, and that will come up as well. So you'll see these elements, I think, through the research, and we'll cover sort of some breadth of territory as we find our way there. Now, the research is coming from the Brainstorm Student Interest Report. As I say, it is a report, a research project we do every year in partnership with universities and colleges across the country. The 2023 edition is where this information is coming from. It's the survey is distributed by post-secondary institutions. It takes students about 20 to 25 minutes to complete. So it's big. It's a big study. It was in 2023, the survey period was March through July 2023. We're in the exact same timing now. We're just about to close the 2024 survey. There were 21,000 respondents to the survey. So it's a huge sample size. The makeup is about 80% university, 20% college. This year, we're much closer to about a third or even more in college. So we have really, really nice volume of students in there. They represent over 200 institutions, although there are institutions who partner on this, who have a lot more student responses and get a lot more useful data. There is no cost at all for post-secondary institutions to participate in this and to get a complete report. It's 80, 90-page slides of their students' responses compared to students nationally. It's all confidential, of course, to that institution, and students are not identified through it. So the schools get a tremendous amount of information to help them make their decisions. It is done in English and French. I should note that as well. So that's a little bit of an overview of the methodology. These are actually the participating schools partnered in 2024. So if your school is listed there, You will have a colleague who is responsible for connecting with us and administering it, who will have access to this data. They may be able to share that information with you. So if you see your school listed there in the fall, they'll have a full report, and you'll have the benefit of looking at more details of far more information than I can share with you today. You also may already be familiar with some of this research. If you receive something that looks like this in your inbox every Tuesday morning, it's the weekly stat. It's also free. And what it does is it focuses on one key insight that may or may not be in the other reports. We often dive in on really narrow niches, specific diversity groups or majors or what have you, and try and share a little snippet, one data point or so, and also create a bit of discussion around it. So we include discussion questions. So this was a recent one. 84% of students think that a career goal motivates them to succeed at school, which I think is actually quite interesting, that so many students realize that having a career goal will help draw them through their education, will help them in so many ways, and giving them that focus. It also relieves some amount of stress, all the worry about, is this worth it? Why am I here? And so on. So students seem to get that. So in this case, the email would have said that and would have had a little bit of more context and some discussion questions for you. So there is again, a QR code to subscribe there. And if you download, if you contact me to download the slides or through that QR code, I'll be sure to get you more information about this as well. Now, almost always the weekly stat is a stat based on our student insights. In fact, STAT stands for Student Trends and Thoughts. But we also did a survey this year with STEM professionals. And STEM professionals for us, by the way, they're marketers, they're registrars, they're recruiters, they're student life and success folks. It's really, to me, anybody in post-secondary, and quite frankly, that includes academics too, are involved in ensuring enrollment is optimized and successful for the students. So we did a survey of STEM professionals, and 42% of them said they agree or strongly agree that their school effectively markets its programs. So obviously 58% don't agree, or they're sitting on the fence with this one. So I thought that was sort of an interesting context for here to say, hey, people aren't so convinced that their institution's doing a great job of marketing. Of course, everyone has an opinion on marketing, especially non-marketers, so you know that. But I thought that was an interesting setup as we get into this, and something to think about. Of course, the pressure is always there, and in this environment, probably more so than ever. I'd like to start with talking about the question of why students are in university or college in the first place. And I've been sharing the results of this question for many years. We've been doing the survey off and on for more than 20, so always going at this. I feel like the audience always knows the answer now, but I want to keep our eyes on this because it's so important. So, why do they enroll in university college? Is it because it's just the next logical thing after high school? Is it developing a broad base of skills, professional credentials, preparing for a job, increasing my earning potential, to get a good general education? What are those reasons? And when I pose these questions in this presentation, I really encourage you to write down, just make a little note, what you think that answer is before we get there. Just test your knowledge and also see if there's a disconnect there, or maybe you're bang on every time. But as you look at these, make a little note to yourself, write it down, put it in the chat if you want to, and if you're attending virtually. Why do students enroll in post-secondary? And this question has evolved a little bit over the years. There are other surveys out there that present the information quite differently because they ask the question differently. But we're talking to students in all years and all majors, all walks of life in school. Why did you choose to enroll in post-secondary? And the number one reason is, hands down, to prepare for a job or career. Now, we used to have this broken into prepare for a job, and another one was like to get ready for a career in something that really interests me, or something. We consolidated into prepare for a job or career because that's really what it is. Number two is to increase my earning potential, and we didn't even have this on the list in the first 15 years of our survey. And when it was added, we realized, oh wow, that's a big reason, right? Students go to post-secondary because they understand that's how you get a great job, and that's how you make more money than if you don't go to university and college. And that is the promise inherent in post-secondary, inherent in what you are all promoting. To increase my knowledge in an academic field, it is up there. It's high. It is a reason that students are there. We don't deny it, but we often find that people on the academic side of the house have these things ranked differently or incorrectly. I felt like it was the next logical step after high school. That kind of makes me sad. I don't like to think of that as being a key reason, but for a lot of students, they're just going with the flow and not sure what else to do, and to discover my interests and explore them in more detail. So these are the top reasons they're doing it. What I want to show you, though, is what that looks like graphically. And this will be a little hard to read, but the main point here is pretty obvious. One of these bars is a lot longer than the others, and that's to prepare for a job or career. 62% of students, they have three choice, they can pick up to three out of the list, and 62% of them are saying that one. So that's a big gap down to 37% to increase my earning potential, and just a little less to increase my knowledge in an academic field. But these are big differences. I don't want to say, I want to make sure people understand that to increase my knowledge in an academic field, that's still important to students. And in our SEM survey, we found that the people in SEM actually had that much lower on the list. So it's still important. But increasing my knowledge in academic field told me I wasn't going to get a job, wasn't going to help at all. I wouldn't even be there. Right. So we have to be mindful of what their highest priorities are. And that's why, as an organization, we have a really big focus on career development people and will and experiential learning, and then also the employers that are hiring the students, so we can have a shared understanding of what the employment market wants from students and from educators. So those are those top ones, and for high job or career is just so much more dominant. Now, perhaps even more important to you well, certainly you need to be able to address the career question with every student. The next one is, okay, so how are they going to choose their school specifically? So I'm starting right off with the key things to marketers, but I think as we get into this and we think about how you develop personas and how you really target your marketing, there'll be some other things that'll be quite important to you in this presentation. But how do they choose their school? Is it all about the appealing campus culture? Is it the lower tuition fees? Is it the program reputation? Is it the top employers are there? Is it that it's close to home, away from home? It's a great town, love the town, financial assistance, these kinds of things. Again, write it down. What do you think is the number one reason they choose your school? I'm sharing the data, nationally across institutions, both university and college. And a few times here, I'll highlight some differences between universities and colleges because they are different. In fact, this one I'm going to do that with. So they are different in some cases. In some cases, it's all the same. But why are they choosing your school? And what are you marketing to out of this list that will fit with them? In 2019, so I just want to do a little bit of a comparison about the shift here. In 2019, school reputation was number one. Then a specific career-related program, wanting to live close to home, was number three. This is college, I should point out. So this is just the college students. Overall quality of academic programs, the fact that there's a co-op or internship program, the size of school being smaller, and so on. 2019, this is obviously the last time we were surveyed pre-pandemic. 2020 was a very weird set of survey results. I'm going to compare 2019, 2023. And as I do this a few times through this presentation, I want to set this up. When you have a really substantial respondent profile, take 20,000 students, it's very reliable data. You don't suddenly have a big variation in your results because one year you surveyed 100 of those people, and this year it surveyed another 100 students, but they were actually all in a different program. So we don't expect big changes, and they take years to happen. And just like we think of generations as being, these 20-year blocks, it takes time to evolve. But these are exceptional times. So some of the changes we see under this question of why they chose their school, and with the college students, wanting to live close to home went from number 3 to number 1. That is a very large jump. To jump 2 stages in just 4 years is really big. The other thing that came up one notch is lower tuition fees, and then offering me financial assistance or scholarship comes onto the list. So wanting to live closer to home, tuition, financial assistance, so a lot of financial stuff here and cost of living kind of things has moved these up the list with the college students. Now, we think of colleges as being in community and being somewhere that students would often go close to home, although, that's more of a historical thing than a current present day thing. I'm sure many of you know. But so what happens when we look at university students? Well, number one thing, both college and university, number one was always reputation. Then overall quality programs, wanting to live close to home was number 3 there, and so on as well. Wanting to live away from home is actually on the list with university students at number 8. But when we jump over to 2023, the same thing happened. Wanting to live close to home jumped up to the top of the list, and the financial assistance and lower tuition fees, which weren't even on the top 8 2019. The lists are longer, by the way. These are just the top ones. that all came up the list. Right? So that all moves up the list. Again, financial concerns, cost of living, finding housing, etc. And then I just highlight favorable aspects of the city town because, first of all, it was at 6 in 2019. Now it's at number 8. But this is something that I find that marketers and recruiters think is way more important to students than it is. And again, the survey I referenced earlier that we did with some people reflected that. They had it way high on the list. Perhaps when a student falls in love with the city, then it becomes very, very influential. But overall, it is not something that they're saying is the reason they came. Just a quick snippet here. This is why co-op students choose their school. So if a student is in a co-op program or wants to be in a co-op program, it will be the number one thing they're looking for. And they'll also look for top employers at that school. And what I want to point out here is wanting to live closer to home drops. You can't change the location of your school. You can't suddenly be close to home for all the students you want to reach, except those in your immediate vicinity. You can choose to develop or promote your co-op program. Now, this says co-op/internship program. That's the way the question is positioned to students. But let me be clear. Co-op is co-op. Co-op is a brand students understand. Co-op means job. Co-op means job while in school and job after graduation to students. Which is short for work integrated learning for those who don't know, internship, experiential learning, and so on. Those terms are not brands. There's no student awareness of those. So it's really important to talk to students about what you have that will help them launch into the workplace, help them perhaps fund their education too, like a co-op program or an integrated internship program that they'll do during their studies. It's important to talk about those things, but let's be aware of when we say co-op, they'll already have some strong associations. School is get great grades. Get great grades, and everything else will take care of itself. I know my daughters, and probably see there's a lot of high school students, they're told in grade 11, okay, after drop your extracurricular. You got to stop all those other things that are taking away from doing well in school, because all the schools are going to look at is your grades. So we need to really work with students. This we're here now trying to figure out how much students value different
Hey, I
interactions with
think
different
what
people
we're
on
going to do
campuses,
is
from
we're going to
academic
pivot a little bit
advisors
and
to
maybe we'll
different
get
student
Graham
services
up
to
live with
professors
his
to
slides, if that works. Graham, can you give me a big thumbs up maybe if that works for you? Let's get Graham up here.
I can pull up my slides if you'd like.
Great. That works for me. I think we can get you up there.
Just trying to figure out where we were at.
We were at about 24 minutes of your recording. I don't know if that helps you with your slide.
Sure. I think we have this on the screen. Oh, let me share.
Just let me know when you've got your slides up and I can bring them onto stage.
Yeah, it looks like it wants to put everything on screen. So let's just see how I do that.
And again, I want to thank everyone for their patience with us. Technology is a funny thing sometimes.
Okay. Oh, here we go. All right. Do you see a slide now?
I do.
Yeah. How much do your students value their interactions with other campus? And you can hear me?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And can you remind me the finish time? Because I'm going to have to move a little quicker.
Sorry, say that again.
We wrap up in 25 minutes. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll move quickly and
thank have everyone. A little bit more time just because of our difficulties here.
Okay. I will thank everyone for sticking with us this far. So people can see my slides, hopefully me as well. What did I want to say? Oh, this will be really quick. We asked students about the value of their interactions on campus. And actually, I think we've reworded this for 2024 where you get more to the point. All I really wanted to show you here was a little comparison between university and college. So here, this is complicated. Really simply, just look at all the purple on here. And purple means a 4 out of 5. It means great. I'm really happy with my interactions with students or academic advisors or faculty and professors and so on. Simple point here is when I switch from this, which is showing university students' responses, to this, which is college student domestic responses, the purple and of 2 shades there gets a lot bigger. All I'm saying here is there's a really interesting thing, which maybe you've heard about. College students are much happier with their institutions. And it makes me think, well, maybe those of us working in the university sector should be trying to figure out what needs to be modeled there. Here's back to universities again. Pretty happy with students. Really not strong ratings with professors, for instance, at 63%, where if you go here and look at the college students, they're saying 77% of them are saying a 4 out of 5 relationship with my faculty and professors. So that's kind of an interesting thing, and we might want to think about what we can model from the college environment. Now, this is just this example that I'm giving you. There are other pieces that lead me to this thinking. One was we asked students how they were being supported through the pandemic by their schools. The college students were thrilled. The university students, not as much. There are other interactions there as well. And I will keep moving fairly quickly to get us back on track here. But what does your school prioritize? This is about trying to get a sense of what feeling of priorities the school has. And the list here are the kinds of things that schools are often creating as strategic priorities internally right now. So are we focusing more on student studying and academic achievement, or good mental health, or career after graduation, and so on? So there's quite a long list here, and just sort of trying to take the temperature so that as institutions are setting strategic objectives and trying to figure out, is the message getting across to students? Are they feeling that we're working more on mixing people of different cultural backgrounds and things like that, whatever it might be. And here again, just going to separate college domestic from international. By the way, I do like to look at college domestic and international quite separately, because they're really very different groups of students with different preferences, as you can imagine. But here I'm just using college students domestic and can compare to universities. So the college students are saying, my school is primarily about preparing me for a career for graduation. Like, it's the school, what the school emphasizes, not just what I'm there for. And then it's about supporting students' academic success. And I'm reading through these because they are small, and you will get the slides if you request them, so you'll be able to read these more on your own time. Providing learning support services, gaining work experience through co-ops, and so on. We look at the university students. Now, interestingly, the top thing on the list is gaining work experience through co-ops, internships, and other work while in school, focusing on studying and academic achievement, providing learning supports, and so on. If I take out the co-op students, that, of course, changes completely. That's not the top thing. It goes way down the list, but also preparing for career after graduation, which is number 5 here with the university students, that also drops a few points down the list. So when you take out the co-op students in the university environment, they are not feeling that their institution is prioritizing career readiness at all. And yet that's what they're there for. As we said off the top, and as you know well, it's the top reason they're there. They are not getting that vibe from their institutions. And it doesn't have to just come from in the classroom, but obviously a big part of it is there. Then this briefly is just to show, hey, here's what one school's real data looks like compared to overall. So it really is helpful to know exactly what your own students are thinking at your school, along with this sort of context that gives you the national picture. What do you think students' biggest sources of stress are? And you might want to jump into the chat, or those in the room, just write down what you think their biggest sources of stress are. Why is this important? I think it's really hard for them to hear your message, whatever your message is, if they are under stress, right? It's very hard to communicate with someone and be heard by someone who is experiencing stress. So in 2019, just to do this sort of pre and post pandemic comparison, final exams and final and midterms exams, then finances, then planning for a career after graduation comes up top 3. What happens in 2023, 4 years later, is finances moves to the top. So any shift like this sounds small, but it's a significant shift in our data point. Now the list has changed a little bit. 2 things were added to the list in the interim there. So 2023 has the 2 with asterisks there. Time management was added to the list, and balancing part or full-time work while in school was added to the list, which is not really something that we thought about being a big source of stress. In fact, back in the first days when we created this question some years ago, we thought it would have been like parental pressure or social media pressure or those kinds of things that were bothering them. Those just, they're way down the list. These are just the top 6 I'm showing you. But finances, of course, are coming up. And the balancing part or full-time work while in school, I don't have it segmented here, but if you looked at international students, particularly college, but I think in both, that comes up the list. A lot of those students are balancing work while in school, and it's a stress. And often they're not quite as worried about finals and midterms, quite frankly. And career for graduation, that sort of gets pushed down by some of those other criteria. Which of the following career goals are most important to you? And as you can tell, I like to think about career a lot. I don't think a student's going to be happy if they get at the other end of an institution. It's not making them feel like they have been advantaged in any way towards their career. So we do look at this a lot. But I think it also tells us a lot about their character and their mindset and what they feel beyond just careers. So which of the following career goals are most important to you? Again, commit to yourself right now. Which of these, just on paper, in chat, wherever, do you think is most important to students? Is it about feeling like I'm serving a greater cause or achieving secure employment, being creative and innovative, being intellectually challenged, balancing work life and personal life, maximizing my income, and so on? And this is a career goal. So I'm going to share with you what they want out of their first job in a few minutes, but this is career goals. This is bigger picture, long-term. What is it they are looking for? What are they hoping for? What do they aspire to? This is the kind of information we tend to use to characterize a generation to some degree, and you'll see it in media a lot. Balanced work life with personal life has been number 1. It was in 2019. It was also number 1 20 years earlier. And when we first started talking about that in the early 2000s, people said, oh, these millennials are all lazy. I think we all know that balancing work life and personal life is not about being lazy, and that people tend to have a lot of other things going on. So then achieving secure employment, serving a greater cause, and so on. Number 5, maximize my income. So take a look at what happens to that number 5, maximize my income. In just 4 years, it goes from 5 to 2. This is a seismic shift. This is a earth-shattering kaboom, as I like to say. So it's a really big move for, in 4 years, the mindset of this whole generation. It was 23,000 students in the survey in 2019, 21,000 in 2023. This is what they believe. And so everything else gets pushed down a little bit, and maximize my income goes way up to the top. Now, you might also look at these two things, and at least my reaction, a lot of people's reaction, is balance work life with personal life, maximize my income. Do you get to have both in a career? Isn't it a choice? I think that's the mindset of a lot of more experienced workers, is that you get one or the other, and it can be hard to have both. And so what we're hearing here from this generation coming through is, I want to make as much money as I can, pay the bills. And it's not really about work. It's about balance and what else is going on in my life. So that was career goal. We'll come back to what they want out of that first job, which, traditionally it's been, I might ground it out a little bit in my first job and get that career goal down the line. But before we go there, I want to talk about this one. Who in your career choice process is most influential on your decision making? And again, we're asking about influence on decision making, but I think you're always wondering who influences people when you're students, when you're marketing to them, when you're working with them. This is specific to career, but I think to some degree you can extrapolate from this in other roles and other areas that you're marketing. So we asked them about these top influencers, from professors, girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, parents, academic advisors, someone working in a specific career that interests me, campus career co-op office, and so on. So again, in your mind, just take a moment to think, what do you think will come at the top of the list? Who are the big influencers on students? And let me add a little twist on that. These are the words that they're responding to, but there's another way, I think, of looking at the 6th one on the list there. Someone working in a specific career that interests me. If I'm thinking about a career, someone working in a specific career that interests me, well, that's a role model. Right. So I think we wrote role model. I'm not sure how students would respond to that in the survey. No, it's not a role model, but it's someone who I'm really interested in being like, or doing what they do. And so what happens, we find, is that is actually the number one influencer. It's very closely ranked with parents. But it really depends on what major students in, what cultural background they have, and so on, where this will end up. College students, someone working in a specific career that interests me goes very strong, very fully to the top, and parents comes down quite a bit. Black students will have that influencer at the top of the list, very much so. So, when they're out being recruited by organizations, if they don't see people that look like them in that organization, they're going to see that as a real barrier. But I think this is important to think about just beyond the career piece too. Who are the influencers? And if they aren't seeing representation of themselves in your organization, in your majors, in your programs, in the activities on campus, then they don't see a place for themselves. So I think that's really interesting. By the way, professors are far more influential on the career thinking of college students than university students. You're probably not surprised by that. There's the chart just to show visually how much ahead this role model, as I've rephrased it, and parents are there with those 2 bars on the left. Students can pick up to 3, so it adds up to a lot more than 100%. But those 2 are the really dominant influencers when it comes to thinking about careers. So as I said a moment ago, when considering a full-time employment with an organization immediately following graduation, which of these will be most important? So what criteria are they evaluating that first job after graduation on? Are they thinking, long-term benefit, but for now it's something else? What is it are they looking for? Is it work-life balance? Is it salary level? Is it variety of work, job security, interesting work, opportunity for advancement, the opportunity to make an impact is there somewhere, good people to work with, a good person to report to, healthy workplace, and so on. So these are the things that we're asking to evaluate that first job on. Our lists, by the way, evolve based on student feedback every year. Most of our questions have an other option, and we look for an other that gets traction. We bring it into the pick list. So in 2019, here's what you've got. You've got good people to work with, really important. And historically, this has been quite important to students. So, and I think that's very mature, right? You haven't been in the workplace a lot. Maybe you've done some summer jobs and co-ops and so on, but you already have this idea that finding good people to work with is really important. Finding a good boss, a good person to report to, is also going to be really valuable to your career and your life experience, quite frankly. So I think that's really interesting to see both of those there. Look at where that good initial salary is. It's number 11. It's way down the list. Employers often have this perception, oh, these candidate didn't accept my offer. They said it was because they got offered more somewhere else. We really have to be, paying a lot to compete. And we've always been able to say, actually, no, as long as you're in the ballpark, that's not going to be a factor. There's all these other criteria that are much more important to students. That was pre-pandemic. 2023, radically different. This is just crazy. I mean, I was going to do a top 10. I had to put the 11th on there just to get the initial salary level to show up. Seismic change, 4 years, we've never seen movement like that over the 20 years we've been doing this. So money talks. Look what's number 2, work-life balance. Work-life balance was not a first job priority. That was something I worked towards. So now we've got the career goals, work-life balance, and initial salary as sort of the career goals 1 and 2, and here this switched over. Salary's number 1, work-life balance is number 2, and these people to work with are getting pushed down from the most important thing to me to number 4. And look what happened to the boss. Good people to report to went all the way down to number 12. Connection to people is not what I'm feeling. It's not what I'm finding. You heard it in the keynote this morning. Young people are starving for connection as much or more perhaps than everyone else. And yet when it comes to the workplace, they see it as a tool to get some money and some balance so they can do other things. That might be simplifying it a little bit, but boy, this is really stark and interesting change that we're seeing here. Getting near the end, what values are most important to students? We've worked through this question over the years, try to simplify it. If you have a survey and you ask questions that are too complex, you don't get very meaningful answers. So we've really pleased with where we've ended up with and saying these are the values. It can read these words and understand what it means and quickly translate whether that's what they're looking for in life. So what do students value most? And I challenge you to write down your top one here or note it on your paper, or hold it in your brain for a minute here. But what is it that students value most? And I say I challenge you because we've asked people in the field, STEM professionals, enrollment professionals, registrars, what they think it is. And we ask employers this exact same question in our employer survey every year to find out what they think students value most. They're all way off. So if you get this one, give yourself some star points for getting it well, because after you see the list, I think you'll say, yes, of course. But before you see it, people are not getting it right. Pursuit of happiness is number 1. Personal success is number 2. Helping others, number 3. Independence, flexibility, trustworthiness, security. So those are the top 7. There's some moving around in 2, 3, 4, depending on majors and so on. Students in caring professions, education, healthcare, and so on. Helping others will likely be number 2. Business students, personal success is solidly in number 2 there, or even up to number 1. So that moves around a little bit. I'll just show it graphically briefly, just so you can see that pursuit of happiness and personal success are pretty firmly in the 1 and 2 position. But as I said, certain social work, social fields, and so on, those helping others mindsets, those professions will move the needle there a little bit. Just to go back to that full list. Number 6, trustworthiness. This is an interesting side note. I was doing some evaluation of international students and what they value. And then we were doing it because we have this really large sample, several thousand international students, I think 4,000 or 5,000 to be precise. We also find out who's East Asian, who's South Asian, who's Latin American, European, and so on. So I was looking at the South Asian students, where I saw one of the biggest differences. And trustworthiness, number 6 there, was number 1 for them. So a huge difference amongst the South Asian students that trustworthiness was number 1. And with that information, I then reflected on whether we were delivering on being trustworthy in Canada when we draw them from small towns all across South Asia, all across India, and attract them to Canada to come to school, and whether we were delivering on that promise. And that disconnect concerns me. But that's a whole other conversation. So that's their most important values. So as I said, overall, we're talking about a tale of lost connections, which again was the theme in our opening this morning. Money problems won't surprise you, inflation, cost of living, and so on. But not everything's about the money. I don't see that as the only reason that salary is going high on the list. I think it's also a devaluing, a misunderstanding of the importance of working face-to-face with people. My own daughters are both in their 20s, early career, fully able to work from home, also fully invited to go into the office whenever they like. And it's all I can do to convince them to go to the office more often. And the more they do it, the healthier they are, especially of mind. They're making connections. But there's a real hesitancy to do it if you don't have to do it. And then finally, the pursuit of happiness. This is what our generation of students are looking for. And that's what they're pursuing. That's what they value most. So with that, I'll put that back up on the screen there. The QR code is there if you want to request the slides, because I'd be happy to share them with you. We just like to know who has our data in hand. And with that, I think we can go to questions, and hopefully we've got some time here. And hopefully we didn't miss too much in me skipping us along there through the outages. And I hope you were able to see all that. So let me find out from you if there are questions. Resize that on my screen so I can see. Some of these feel like a bleak reflection of the world. Just looking at the comments here in the chat now. Let me know if there are any questions. I'm not hearing anybody in terms of a moderator, but that might be part of our technical switchover. If you want to write anything in the chat, I can respond to questions there. Yeah, Catherine, that's an interesting point. And I don't know that, well, we are in a tricky time. There's no question, and young people are having these thoughts about, how to move forward, I'm sure, especially largely because of the cost of life. Just taking a look to see if there's anything else here in the chat to respond to. Did you survey both undergrad and graduate students in universities? Yes, all levels, all majors. Today, I was predominantly focusing on the undergrads, but we actually have a really large pool of masters and even PhD students that we can analyze separately. As I may not have mentioned, we also collect all the diversity information, so we're able to parse the data and look at students in all the different groups. I just recently looked at how many students are over 30 in our sample and how many over 25, and realized there's a lot of more mature students in there. So again, there's an opportunity to look at that as well. The schools tend to get reports from us for free for participating, but those are generalized. And then when someone really wants to understand a market specifically, then we're able to do, for modest cost, putting together specific reports around some of these other areas. I agree. I think graduate students would have some differences in what they're saying. Inevitably, that's the case. And even when I compare computer science students to art students or to business students, we get some very significant differences in the way people see the world. Thanks for those questions, Maya. Other questions? Just scrolling back to see if there are any other. No, everything else was about the power going out. I'll hang on here for a minute. If you do have any other questions, do let me know. Well, for those who are still here virtually, I'm not sure if the room is still with us, but thank you very much for your time. And I hope this was useful to you, and be happy to share the slides. Again, hopefully that QR code's a little blurry on my screen. Hopefully it's coming through sharply. If not, my email's there, graham@brainstorm.ca. Just send me a note, and I can respond to any of your questions. Let's connect on LinkedIn as well, and I can send you those slides.